I think he's going to clip Vargas with that right hook. I think Antonio Vargas is going to try to get back up, but he's not going to make the count. So I'm going to go with Jesse Rodriguez by 6th round KO. That's going to be my final prediction.
With him like he was earlier. It takes a lot of energy to... Oh! What a shot from Bam Rodriguez! And Vargas is flopping on the floor like a fish! I think he's done! Bam!
Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.
What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Puncher's Point. Jesse Bam Rodriguez has put the entire bantamweight division, including Inoue, on notice because Jesse Bam Rodriguez defeats Antonio Vargas by 6th round KO to become the new WBA Bantamweight Champion. And you want to take a guess who predicted that? Your boy. I predicted in the prediction episode a 6th round KO, and that's exactly what we get. I don't usually toot my horn when it comes to this podcast, but I'm doing it this time around. Jesse Bam Rodriguez went in there and he did exactly what he had to do to get this fight done and to make a statement to not just Inoue, but the entire bantamweight division and even the super bantamweight division. Shout out to Jesse Bam Rodriguez on getting that 6th round KO. But I'm not going to lie to you guys. Antonio Vargas, he looked good out there. He looked a lot better than what I thought he was going to look. And I'm going to talk about some of the moments in this fight. I'm going to talk about where it went wrong. I'm going to talk about all those types of things. But first, we are going to get right into it. We are going to be talking about the strategy. Now, as far as the strategy, Bam Rodriguez, he started off this fight chaining his hooks together, throwing that jab. And he was doing a very good job of attacking on the inside. Now, most of this fight was an inside fight. And it kind of surprised me in a way because I thought Jesse Bam Rodriguez was going to fight a lot more on the outside. But it's almost like he wanted to engage. It's almost like he wanted to take Antonio Vargas' best punch so he can deliver his best as well. And a lot of those moments on the inside, you would see him chain those hooks together. You would see him throw that jab. But Antonio Vargas did a pretty good job of starting off hot and even using that jab. Now, I know the commentators, I know that in the first 4 rounds, they had a 3-1 Vargas. I had a 3-1 Bam, in my opinion. But the things that Vargas did good with were basically chaining those punches. Like I said, he knows how to do when it comes to those hooks and everything. Chaining the punches together, using the jab and the straight basically to get through Bam's guard. Usually when he gets into those inside exchanges, usually his opponents have shots against him or they find shots against him. But if you guys go back and look at the prediction episode, I also said that if we're talking about the exchanges, Bam Rodriguez is going to get the best of those every single time. So overall, I think Vargas did a pretty good job of connecting those punches together. Also making sure he got his fair share of punches in during those inside exchanges. Now, I also wanted him to go to the body, and I don't think he went to the body that much in this fight. I wanted to see Antonio Vargas land that left hook. The left hook really wasn't clicking for him. But overall, I think the one thing he did a good job with was keeping Bam in front of him for the most part. Now, Bam had his moments of cutting the angles and getting the best of Antonio Vargas. However, for the most part, Antonio Vargas did a pretty good job of keeping Bam in front of him. And whenever Bam would try to cut those angles, he did a very good job of following him. And I got to give Antonio Vargas a lot of credit on that. Now, as far as Bam, the cutting angles in the early round were definitely having success. However, Antonio Vargas adapted to that and he made the adjustment. Bam Rodriguez did a very good job of finding that left straight and also using that jab efficiently throughout the entire fight as well. So I got to give Bam a lot of credit on that too. The straights were working for Bam. And you could tell that he was just getting really comfortable in that ring. Little by little, he was putting it all together. He didn't mind taking those punches. When Bam got that knockdown in the 5th round, when he connected with that left hand, you could tell that all the momentum that Antonio Vargas had went away with a snap of a finger. Once he clipped Antonio Vargas with that left hand, that's when all the momentum got drained from Antonio Vargas. And I got to give Bam a lot of credit on that because the one thing about Bam Rodriguez, whether he's down, whether it's a close fight, it does not matter. Bam Rodriguez is going to pull it out the bag. And this is what I mean when I say he is the most complete fighter in boxing. I mean, this guy is incredible. I have not seen a guy in boxing today who has as many tools as Bam Rodriguez to where it's really hard to find a weakness. And then obviously we go into the 6th. In the 6th round, Antonio Vargas gets hurt. He's basically trying to survive. He's trying to recover from the damage in the 5th round. But when Bam hit him with that right hand and then followed up with that left hook, knockdown, game over. Good fight, Antonio. And Jesse Rodriguez went in there, did exactly what he had to do, as I said before, and he became champion. So I think both guys had a decent strategy. I wish I saw more body work from Antonio Vargas. I wish I saw him throw the left hook a lot more. But at the end of the day, when you're going into those rounds with Bam Rodriguez, it's a whole different ballgame. Once you give Bam even the slightest room to take momentum, he's going to take it all. So I got to give Bam a lot of credit on that. Now, as far as the excitement, I thought this was a good fight. I really did. I thought there were a lot of back and forth moments. I thought it was an exciting fight. I like how Antonio Vargas just kept on coming forward. I like how he wasn't afraid to throw punch for punch with Bam Rodriguez, because I feel like if you're going to beat Bam, you're going to have to throw some punches. You can't just beat him defensively. You're going to have to throw. You are going to have to go in there and you're going to have to exchange with Bam. And I think Antonio Vargas did a decent job with that. Even though there were moments where Bam would get the best of him, Antonio Vargas kept on coming forward. Antonio Vargas had some moments of his own, especially in the 2nd round, where he got Bam against the ropes and he started teeing off on him. That made it an exciting fight as well. This guy was not going to back down from Bam. And you see a lot of guys, they'll either back down or they'll try to move around and not try to get hit. They'll play it safe, kind of like the way Cafu did. However, Antonio Vargas didn't do that. He's like, look, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. And I can respect that from a fighter. So I think both these guys had very exciting moments. You had the knockdowns. You had the moments from Antonio Vargas. You had a lot of moments from Bam Rodriguez. You had the back and forth exchanges. I thought this was a very exciting fight, and I got to tip my cap to both guys. Now, as far as the stakes in this fight, well, you think about it, the WBA Bantamweight title was on the line, but at the same time, a lot of people have been building up the Naoya Inoue versus Bam Rodriguez fight, and so you also got to think, well, Bam becoming a 3-division champion just adds to that hype. So the stakes were pretty high as well. However, what I will say, too, is I don't want people just focusing on that Naoya Inoue fight. Yes, it's a super fight, but we got time to make that fight. And I think the stakes on the line were, can Jesse Rodriguez handle bantamweight? How is he going to be able to handle the power going to 118 pounds? You got to take that into effect. There's that WBA championship on the line, but at the same time, how is he going to go in there and how is he going to look at bantamweight? Because if he doesn't look good at bantamweight, he's not going to look good at super bantamweight, most likely. But he looked really good at bantamweight. You could tell that his punches still had power. You could tell that he could take the power from a power puncher in the bantamweight division like Antonio Vargas. However, for me, there's still questions involved. But as far as what was on the line in this fight, I think Bam proved that he is a bantamweight champion, that he belongs to be in that division, that he can punch with the best of them, he can knock out the best of them, and that he's ready to take on the next challenge. And then last but not least, the impact. Well, I think this impacts the sport of boxing because there are some fights that you can make with Bam Rodriguez. So, and I'm going to talk about what I think should be next for him. But obviously, that Naoya Inoue fight is the biggest fight that people want to see. But you can't forget about somebody like Junto Nakatani. You can't forget about somebody like Naoya Inoue's brother Takuma. Susumi is still there. So you got to look at it in that sense as well. There's still other challengers for Bam to fight, and there's still other champions that Bam can add to his resume. So I don't want to see him just skip right to the Inoue fight. I want to see him kind of establish himself at bantamweight first before he can get his way onto super bantamweight. Look, I think he's ready for super bantamweight. Don't get me wrong. I think that he's proven that he belongs in the bantamweight division, but there's still fights to make in the bantamweight division that can push your legacy even higher to make this fight with Inoue that much bigger. So I do think that it definitely impacts the sport of boxing. It definitely impacts the division as far as bantamweight and super bantamweight. But I would like to see some more fights from Jesse Rodriguez, maybe 1 or 2 more fights before we get to see him go to super bantamweight. So when we go to the overall grade, I got to give it an 8 out of 10. Look, both of these guys, they had a decent strategy. There were some things that Antonio Vargas could have did better. Yes, he could have attacked the body a lot more. He could have used his left hand a lot more. As far as Bam Rodriguez took a different approach. I predicted that Antonio Vargas was going to get clipped and knocked out with the right hand, but we know that Bam Rodriguez is a lefty. So Bam hit him with the left hand, and that's the fight. That's the punch that got him down. That's the punch that got him to the ground, even though technically it was a right and then a left. Regardless, he knocked him down with the left hand. He knocked him out with the left hand, and that was the end of the fight. He had a different strategy involved. He decided to go onto the inside a lot more. I wanted to see Bam fight on the outside a lot more. So as far as strategy, I got to give that a 7.5 out of 10. Excitement and stakes, I give both of those an 8. I think that they're pretty high. I thought it was a good fight. I'm not going to say it's an all-time classic, so I got to give it an 8 out of 10 as far as excitement. As far as the stakes, there were some things in the line, but yet you still leave questions. So I think that as far as the stakes, I got to give it an 8 out of 10 because Bam has established his name in the bantamweight division. However, there's still things that we can do in this division as well. And then the impact, I got to give it an 8.5 out of 10. It just moves us that much closer to the Inoue fight, but at the same time, it's another notch. It's another champion that Bam can put under his resume. So I think 8 out of 10 is pretty fair to put it. I don't know if it's going to make the top 10 of Season 8 or of 2026. I'm not sure if it's going to make that top 10. However, we will see. And then last but not least, what is next for Jesse Bam Rodriguez? Well, we got four technically. We got 4 potential candidates. So I'm going to get the obvious one out the way. Naoya Inoue versus Bam Rodriguez. Would it be a super fight? Yes. But could it be drawn bigger as time progresses? 1,000%. So I say we need to hold off on that one. Inoue's still in his prime. Jesse Bam Rodriguez is still young. He's finally entered the bantamweight division. Let's see him move on with it. Now, we go to Junto Nakatani. Do you take that risk of fighting Junto before you fight Naoya Inoue? In my opinion, I want to see how it plays out if Junto and Inoue have a rematch. I want to see how it plays out. So I say you hold off on Junto. And now we got 2 more. We go to Susumi and we go to Takuma. Now, both of those guys need to fight and they haven't fought yet. However, Bam Rodriguez has an interesting thing to do. He could fight Susumi and add him to his resume. But Susumi is not a big enough name, in my opinion, to elevate him any higher to fight Naoya Inoue. So what do? Well, what better way to make that fight even bigger with Naoya Inoue than to beat Takuma, who is a multiple division champion, who is Naoya Inoue's younger brother. You beat him, and then you force this fight to become even bigger. So you add another champion to your resume, and then on top of that, you even build up the hype for Naoya Inoue versus Bam Rodriguez. So if I'm Bam Rodriguez, I'm taking that fight. I'm making that fight with Takuma Inoue. If I am Bam Rodriguez, I am making that fight with Takuma Inoue before I make that fight with Naoya, because it's just going to make that fight with Naoya Inoue that much bigger. So I would say if there's another opponent for Jesse Rodriguez, and you know Jesse Rodriguez is going to fight whoever that champion is. This guy does not take tune-up fights. I think Jesse Rodriguez needs to go and he needs to fight Takuma Inoue first. And I think that's a good test for him at bantamweight because Takuma has a lot of similarities to his brother Naoya. On top of that, they share the same trainer in their father. So I do think that both of these guys are a very difficult task for Bam Rodriguez, but I would like to see him go up against Takuma first to see where he's at before he fights Naoya. But again, like I always say, we're going to have to wait and see. Boxing is a mystery. You never know what could be made. You never know what's going to be done. This is something that we're going to have to wait and see. But regardless, shout out to Bam Rodriguez on becoming the new WBA Bantamweight Champion, on becoming a 3-division champion in the sport of boxing at just the young age of 26 years old. And with that being said, it's time for us to log off. I got the UFC 250 Freedom card to watch, so I'm going to go at that. Make sure y'all tune into this YouTube channel. Make sure y'all come back for the post-fight for that co-main event with Alex Pereira versus Cyril Gane and for the main event with Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. Make sure y'all come back to the channel for that. And with that being said, it's time for us to log off. Continue to subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel. Like, comment, share, follow on all the social medias. And last but not least, make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.